As we get closer and closer to the midterm elections, people really start to pay a lot more attention to things like polling. I recently did a video about problems that Democrats have been having with polls in recent years and how the polls have tended to favor Democrats, sometimes showing Democratic candidates with what appear to be almost insurmountable leads. Then come to find out those numbers were greatly exaggerated. The most obvious and extreme example, of course, was 2016, when polls showed Hillary Clinton beating Donald Trump for the presidency by over 10 points right up until Election Day. We all know how that turned out. So what's going on with the polls this year? Are they still giving more weight to Democrats as they have been since 2014? Or are they artificially inflating Republicans as they did back in the 2012 election cycle? It's hard to say for certain, and I'm not going to tell you that I know what's going to happen. After all, prognosticators throughout history have claimed to know the future only to be proven wrong. That said, I do think the current polls may spell more trouble for Democrats than they're willing to admit. There are a few key races to look at, races that I think could potentially cause some real headaches for Democrats in November. Which races am I talking about, and what makes me think that they're not going to go the way Democrats hope? Well, let's take a look. This is JP with Political Pop Culture, and this is my take. Hey, before I jump into this, I would like to ask you, if you like the content that I put out for you every day, please do me a favor. Hit the like button and then click on subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know anytime we add new content just like this. You'll also be helping the channel by telling the algorithm to show this video to other people who might be interested in viewing it. Every little bit really does help, so thank you. The first race I want to look at is the Nevada Senate race. Incumbent Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto has been shown to be leading in virtually every poll since mid-May. Her average lead is anywhere from 3 to 4 points according to most polling. That is until the last week. Over the last week, 3 separate polls have come out showing Republican challenger Adam Laxalt pulling slightly ahead by anywhere from 1 to 4 points. Now, in most polls, 1 to 4 points is in or around the margin of error, so not too much to worry about there, except for one small problem: independence. In the 2 polls which showed poll participant answers broken down by political affiliation, both showed Republican Adam Laxalt leading by a huge margin with independents. The Data for Progress poll from September 14 to 19 shows Laxalt leading Cortez Masto 52 to 33% among independents. That's a 19-point advantage. The Insider Advantage poll from September 20 shows Laxalt leading Cortez Masto by 55.1 to 24.2. That is a whopping 30.9-point Republican advantage with independents. Now, even if you take away the Insider Advantage poll numbers as being an outlier, you still have the Data for Progress poll showing Laxalt with a 19-point advantage among independents. That is huge, and it likely means that Laxalt has a realistic double-digit lead over incumbent Democrat Cortez Masto. Interestingly enough, recent polls are also showing Republican Joe Lombardo in a dead heat with incumbent Democrat Steve Sisolak in the Nevada governor's race. In that same Data for Progress poll, Lombardo is up 13 points with Nevada independents in his race. By the way, 2 years ago, Joe Biden carried Nevada by 2.39%. The other interesting race going on here is in Georgia. Well, races really, as both the governor's race and the Senate race have some interesting things happening. But let's talk about the governor's race. The Data for Progress poll, conducted from September 16 through September 20, showed some really interesting things. For example, for the question, do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of Stacey Abrams, independents responded with 38% holding a favorable view, but 59% holding an unfavorable view. Incumbent Republican Governor Brian Kemp was still underwater with independents in the favorability department. His favorability rating was 45% favorable to 48% unfavorable, but he was still miles ahead of Stacey Abrams. And keep this in mind, this poll was taken before Stacey Abrams' colossal misstep of claiming fetal heartbeats at 6 weeks were a, quote, manufactured sound. That is almost certainly going to cost her a few votes come election day. Frankly, I don't know how any parent who has ever heard their unborn child's heartbeat could cast a vote for that disgusting sorry excuse for a human being. But that's just me. When you look at the question of who would they vote for in the governor's race, however, you can see just how badly Abrams is trailing Kemp. Kemp has a solid 49% of the independent vote to Abrams' 36%. Again, obviously, Abrams has a 13-point deficit here among independents. Also, keep in mind, Joe Biden just barely eked out a victory in Georgia in 2020. He won the state by less than 12,000 total votes, or 0.23%. And hey, just for a quick bonus here, the Georgia Senate race is pitting incumbent Democrat Raphael Warnock against Republican challenger Hershel Walker. Now what's interesting is if you look at the favorability between the two, they both share an overall favorable rating of 41% among independents. However, Raphael Warnock has a 51% unfavorable rating with independents, whereas Hershel Walker has an unfavorable rating of only 46%. So they're both underwater in the favorability ranking, but Hershel Walker does have a 5-point edge. In the question of who would you vote for U.S. Senator, it is a dead heat between Warnock and Walker. Both have 42% of independents. Now, I know I said I'm not going to do the whole prognosticating thing here, but I got to tell you, I think if Hershel Walker can put on a decent performance in his debate with Warnock on October 14th, Walker wins over more of the independent vote and walks away with the victory on Election Day. In my experience, the independent voters are almost always underrepresented in the polls. They're harder to get to answer the poll questions. They're harder to nail down commitments from. And in many cases, they don't make up their minds until far later in the election cycle who they're going to vote for than partisans do. Everything that I have seen in this election season shows that independents are breaking more to the right than they are to the left. And you're starting to see that in the polling. I still think the polls are weighted to show Democrats with more support than they really have as well. You combine a strong independent turnout for Republicans and polls putting too much weight behind Democratic candidates, and you could end up with a red wave, if not a red tsunami, come November 8th. Again, I'm not a prognosticator, but if I were, I might just be predicting a Republican takeover not only in the House, but in the Senate as well. Walker has a better chance in Georgia than critics are giving him, and I think Laxalt will surprise everyone in Nevada. Take it for what it's worth, but it is my take. And that's my take. What's your take? You can let me know your take in the comments below. You can also let me know your take by joining the cult at PolPopCult on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Rumble, and Truth Social. Thank you for listening.